Heavy metal
My
rock.
global mind.
The scene's unexplored, so come on, climb on board.
I'm Robert Cavuto, and today on My Global Mind, I'm pleased to be speaking with Rick Jackett of Finger 11 to discuss the release of their long-awaited album, Last Night on Earth, that comes out on November 7th. Rick, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time.
I appreciate that because it feels good to be making new music. It now, to be fair, we've been making the music for 10 years. It just hasn't been released. So it's nice to release new music, you know.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions to you. How long, obviously, this has been 10 years in the making. What's the oldest song? What's the newest song? And how is it, how's it been slowly coming together?
Yeah, it has, to be honest. There are some songs. There's a song called Perfect Effigy that had been around for a very long time. It was one of the heavier ones. The title track, Last Night on Earth, only existed in a tiny little phone demo form for a very long time. But that's sort of how it started, was collecting the nuggets of songs till we had enough to be like, and that in itself took a long time because there was some months where two or three ideas would be written, but none of them made it on the record. Then there'd be another month where only one thing was written, but it ended up on the record. So it just took time to sort of get to a place where we're like, okay, this is a collection of music. Because we, as Finger 11, we never really know what our next song is going to sound like. We don't have that kind of agenda going into a room. We just sort of, it's such a form of self-expression that we just allow that to happen. And so when we start making music, it could be, soft, could be funky, could be loud, whatever it is. But, over time, you need to make enough music that you don't just have 7 slow songs or 9 heavy songs. We love that dynamic and we want that kind of feel on our record. So to get the 10 that we felt like made the record, it took years. And I would say the majority of the time was the writing and the creating of the ideas. And then the last year was like a real dig in on like, take these demos, rewrite them into album versions of songs, then record those and put them on the record. So
Okay, that makes total sense. Yeah. So I was going to ask, like, if you recorded something 10 years ago, it might be dated. The sentiment of the song might be,
yeah,
doesn't work anymore. Like it could have been about like a divorce and the guy's divorced and remarried and happily married. And now
that's right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. And there was the luxury of time during this process too, which allowed for things like that. Which in on the flip side of that, some things just lasted, right?
Yeah.
It was like, because even one of the songs Scott wrote, like the words years and years and years ago, but they did seem relevant, strangely enough, nowadays. And same with, there'd be like a riff we might really like, and then you give it 5 years and you're going to know if you like it or not, So that was something that we sort of like, what, we're doing it this way anyway. So let's just sit on. So instead of trying to constantly rewrite stuff, we would sit on things for a while and we just let them stew. And then the solutions would usually come, but not a lot of bands get that opportunity because there's usually someone on the exterior giving them a deadline. Right. And we didn't have a deadline because we didn't have a record label. So we knew we wanted to make another record. We didn't know when it was going to be done. And we knew fans were hoping we make new music, but we didn't want to just make a record to get another tour cycle.
Yeah.
We didn't want to make, we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to just put out the next 10 songs we wrote. We wanted to, at this point in our lives and our career, we wanted to just make a record that we felt was worthy of being alongside the other records we had made. So,
and I think it is. I mean, the architecture of the album seems very instinctual for the band. It really doesn't come across like you missed the step. Not that you would, but it just seems a really nice flow and path. Like
that's a huge compliment.
Yeah. Was that how you felt when you were culling these songs down from the demos and setting up to do the recordings of them?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't think that's an accident, because I think there was one thing that we realized on this record, like, is definitely the only thing we can do, and our biggest responsibility is just put another Finger 11 record out, right? And not and in our lane and not try and change it to fit with anything or even worry ourselves with what other people are doing. Like
Right.
let's just like we take inspiration from a band like AC/DC, right? Who just
Sure.
all or Bad Religion, let's say. There you go. Or like a bad religion, like they're just gonna always show up and it's gonna be them. And they're not gonna care what the latest trend is, and they're not gonna even care what year it is. They're just like one of my favorite examples is like AC/DC dropped Thunderstruck during grunge, you
Yeah.
know, and they were probably in their 50s, and
Yes.
so that is a pretty or ZZ Top in the 80s, right? When they came out and they did ZZ Top when all the other kids were doing MTV, and they didn't try and look like little young kids on skateboards. They looked like men with beards and then, and so to us it was like we're Finger 11 for better or for worse. And for whatever that is, the only thing we can do is come out and be Finger 11 again.
Yeah.
And that is something that we were really trying to embrace on this one. So
And Finger 11, your songs are always very catchy. They're approachable hard rock songs, but there's also an underlying grit and energy like of a metal band with the
for
aggression.
sure.
Um, are you always trying to find ways to inject that into your songs? That metal,
I,
that
you know what? I would probably say like I am like I'm probably that guy in our band, right? Like
yeah,
there's other guys that don't do that and they inject the other sounds, and I'm one of the guys who I love heavy guitars, I love
yeah.
big beats, I love halftime riffs, like I love all that stuff. So to me, that is definitely something I've always tried. Like that's my contribution in this band is just that metal side of things. And probably, I mean, but we all love it. Like on different, me and James both, we're just guitar players. We love distorted guitar. We love
Yeah.
rock guitar, right? So it just, that's probably a big part of it. The fact that there's two guitarists, we outvote everybody right away. So right away, it's going to have distorted guitar on it, it's kind of thing. But no, the sound of the band it's just when it's working its best, it's just a natural expression from five individuals, and it gets meshed together to make whatever Finger 11 is, and
That's the stew
well,
of Finger 11. You know what I mean? If it wasn't that way, you wouldn't sound like Finger 11. It would be totally, different. And
I think so. And in the past, we've had producers that, suggested like it would be easier to get someone to play on the record, or it would be, this kind of thing. And we'd be like, that's literally not the point of a band. Like, the point of the band is to see the sound it makes when the five of us combine our brains and our fingers, and we're into that. Other people, if they are, that's cool too. But like that's what and that's what took us time on this record to get it to where we want it to be, because we want it to sound like Finger 11. And I think it ended up sounding that way. So
yeah, I think it's disingenuous to have studio musicians come in to do with members can't. And I have a lot of favorite bands that you read 20, 30 years later, they had session guys playing this solo or playing this.
yeah.
And the guy didn't even know it was happening. So yeah, I think it's really important. And I think
Well, I just think it's the human nature of music where like, listen, like you can play an E chord and I can play an E chord and they're not going to sound the same for whatever reason. Like it's just the way you strum, the way you hold your fingers, the size of your finger, everything about it is just the way you want to tune your guitar. Like there's just a uniqueness to it. And so that's why, like I don't know, that's what makes some of the greatest bands ever, right? Is like you hear like almost the lack of skill sometimes is what makes it so cool too. Especially like some of that early Stone stuff. It's like those guys are talented and they knew what they were wanted, but like it's so fragile sometimes. I love it. It's, but to me, that's a band and that's our band. That's how you are a band,
that's awesome.
If not, you're a solo artist and that's fine too, but just call yourself a solo artist.
Do you think the band leveled up in songwriting for this album to match what you've done previously?
I think so. Yeah. I think we dug in really heavy on the songwriting on this one and again, Steve, this was the first record we made with him as a member. And so he in his own right is a good songwriter and a good producer. Like he's got his own career. So when you take sort of like where we've evolved to, but then you add him into it and his knowledge of our old music,
Yeah.
really brought this kind of like remembrance of, I don't know, he got us to sort of reflect a bit more than we've ever reflected before on our music. And really, we were surprised and we were happy with the results. But yeah, this was because it was also one of those like there's just at the beginning the process started and we all sort of understood the the project, but we were comfortable and trusted each other enough to let all guards down, right? So anything was able to be said, anything was able to be criticized, as long as you had a better idea or another idea. Like, and so the flow started happening and all the minds were working at the same time on all the parts, and it started to really, really have a great effect on the songwriting. And some of the ideas like came last minute, some of those came quick. There's just, that's my favorite thing about songwriting. There is no magic recipe to it, right? And sometimes the scariest ones are the ones that come quick because you doubt them, right? You're like, wait, this can't be that easy, man. Like, but then you go, okay, it is that easy. And then you go work on the next one. You're like, oh no, it isn't easy at all. Just that one was,
Yes.
and that happened on this record for sure. So,
oh, that's funny. Yeah. I know the band tours extensively.
yeah.
Do you ever test the songs out on sound checks and like just to see how they work and how they sound and how the band fits together from a live perspective? Because I think that's so important to Finger 11 sound, that you guys are truly the band, and when it has to sound good live too,
100%. And I think that did on this record, that definitely, like, we didn't necessarily take them onto the stage, but there was a couple of the songs that got to like what very close to the finish line and we're going to get mixed, and James and I sort of pulled them back and said, like, wait, listen, like, these are cool and there's a lot going on, but like, I want it to be like, feel like this, but just two guitars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We had overdubbed our way into some kind of layered thing, and it was like, this isn't ever going to sound like this live, ever. Right. How do we take these 5 layered guitars and turn them into 2 guitars left and right? And that we did that actually a couple times on this record, and that is exactly that reason, because we knew, like, listen, at the end of the day, I want to feel as excited as I am when I'm listening when we're playing it. Right. And the only way to do that is to bring the guitars down to a simpler place where the parts don't have to be simple, but we can't have layers and layers and layers of parts that aren't, because we don't run tracks. We don't really play that game. So it has to be replicated live. And same with Scott too. Scott can do amazing things with his vocals. Yeah. There's no point in making him. We did this in the past where we got him to perform something on a record where he'll never be able to do that live. Yeah. Or if he did do it, it would blow his voice out for a tour, Yeah. So we same thing is, we want to achieve all those great moments, but we want to make sure live it feels the same way, and we're not ripping anybody off. I
love it. I think that's the perfect sentiment. Is there one song on the new album that really captures where you are as a guitarist? Maybe from the last album, 10 years, long time has passed. You've grown as a writer, you've grown as a player.
I would say my favorite guitar work on this record is, there's a back-to-back, a song called The Mountain, and then a song called Perfect Effigy. And on the record, they sort of go back-to-back. And those 2 songs collectively have my favorite guitar parts on this whole record. The end of Perfect Effigy is one of my favorite riffs we've ever written. It's just one of my favorite things. And then to me, The Mountain is one of the best examples of me and James and our 2 guitar world thing, playing off each other, but not just copying each other all the time and playing, we're playing different things. And that to me is those 2 songs are like, if I put it this way, as my guitar player, if someone was like, show me your favorite guitar parts, I would play them those 2 songs.
Mountain is one of my favorite songs on the album.
Yeah, the Mountain's fun. It's just that was one of the ones that we did that to. That was one of the ones that we brought back from the finish line, deconstructed and then rebuilt it, where it's just was basically on 2 guitars versus a whole bunch of things. So
I also love the second song, Blue Sky Mystery, which featured Richard Patrick. How did that collaboration come about? I mean, that's just so out there, so random.
Yeah, it was a little random, to be honest, because it was one of these things when we were making the songs, our label had sort of throw it out there to this idea, have you ever done a feature kind of thing? And we had never have thought ever, because we're just Finger 11, like we're just the same guys from high school, right? Like it's just, we never have had anybody on a record. So that idea got floated out, and then there was a list floating around. I'm not sure who it came from, but it was not a list of people we would have put on our records.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't up for it. So we basically said, well, listen, like, why don't we make a list and let that one float around and see if any of these people are interested. And Filter or Richard was on that list, and he came back. It was just that simple. It got to him, and he came back. He was like, "Yeah, I'd do this." And we were like, "We will. Oh, this is crazy." And so all of a sudden, that was a real thing.
Yeah.
It was wow. Like, I mean, we all grew up listening to Phil. Like, it's just incredible. So, and then when he recorded it and sent it to us, we were blown away. Like, we were like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, here's this iconic voice like on our song, and he even delivered like a scream like he does in "Hey Man, Nice Shot." And it was like, holy, like, we didn't ask him to do any of that. That's just what he did. And even when we saw him later and we met him for the first time when we were shooting the video, we all got along really well. And we were talking about the whole thing, and he said almost same thing I'm saying. Like, he's just like, yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen until I go in and start singing. So
Wow.
he's like that day I didn't really have any ideas of what to do. I just reacted. And he was like, "Oh, he was like, I was so happy." He's like, they're getting the rough voice today," because he ended up having that rasp in his voice. But yeah, and then we were super stoked with the way it turned out. And one of the coolest things was like, because we've never had anything like that, it was neat to hear someone else sing on our song.
Yeah.
Because it's always Scott, right? So it was just like, wow, it's a neat feeling. I don't know. It was a very cool experience. I'm very happy with the way it turned out.
I think that's a great track too. There's a lot of great tracks. I love it. The
Thank
title
you.
track, another great song. Terrific from the standpoint of acoustic guitar work. That
Yeah.
as well as body and mind. Who inspires you on the acoustic guitar? Like, where do you draw your inspiration from?
Yeah, I mean we're all early Genesis fans,
Wow.
right? So early Genesis would be like, I'm not saying that's what inspired those songs, but that acoustic guitar work from early Genesis would be something and Floyd is another. Like,
Wow.
Floyd is obviously like David Gilmour, like in his playing, but yeah, I mean, just, I don't know, it's endless. Like, I'm a Hendrix fan, so I like Hendrix is he could play any kind of guitar, but like I'm also a Townes Van Zandt fan, and that kind of finger picking thing.
Yeah.
It's just. But as far as the acoustic stuff, again, a lot of times we just try to do what we think the song's calling for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that Last Night on Earth, that was one of those songs that lived on a like a phone message for a very long time, just as a real rough thing, and it was in a different key. And then that probably had like 3 demos, and we probably changed the key twice, and we wrote different chord progressions, and we tried different parts. There's one version of that song that's very like Never Going Back Again by Fleetwood Mac. Like, it's got that finger picking kind of
Yeah.
rollover thing.
Yeah.
But then the version we ended up settling on was sort of a fluke in a weird way, because we had talked about that song more than we had worked on that song. And we sort of got to like, you know what I mean? We got to the 11th hour, and we were doing drums in a real studio. And after we had done all the drums, Steve was sort of like, "Hey, why don't you guys just sit down and strum through Last Night on Earth, and we'll just sort of get some acoustics that we can work around."
Yeah.
And that just ended up being the whole version of the song. Then he was so happy with just acoustics and the voice and the bass, and then we added the strings after that. But up until that point, we still weren't sure how we were going to deliver the song. And it wasn't until we sort of strummed through it naturally and just like, sort of campfired it a bit, and just said, like, how does it feel if you're just strumming the guitar? And then we captured it on tape, and that's sort of what
That's
you hear
great.
when you hear and so, yeah, and then we added the strings, which added that whole next level. But,
Did you know instantly you wanted to name the album after that song?
Nope, no, that just sort of came again. I think I can't remember what there was another name for the album. I don't remember what it was, but it was a working title for a little. There was no name. Then there was a name for like maybe 3 days, and then it was going to go to like the label, like, okay, this is what we're calling the record. And I can't remember. It might have been me. It might have been Steve. One of us on a text chain was like, "What about like Last Night on Earth?" Sort of got thrown out there, or someone. No, what happened was someone referred to it accidentally as Last Night on Earth.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, that's a pretty good name for the album.
Yeah.
And the song is special. And the times we're living in, it just all seemed to make sense. It just was like, you know what? That's the name of this album. So
I love it. I love it. You know,
yeah, and a lot of times when album titles are influenced by James, because James does all the artwork as well.
okay,
So if there's an album
that's cool.
title and he doesn't have an image in his mind, it usually gets nixed,
Yeah.
But with this one, as soon as he heard Last Night on Earth, he had an instant image and that's what the album became. So
Yeah, and the imagery, the album looks cool. I love it. It's
yeah, he
tremendous
did a
art.
great job.
Yeah, it's interesting from the perspective that you said this earlier, and I wasn't going to mention anything about Van Zandt. I really hear a southern hard rock in your playing. The first time I put this, adrenaline on, and I was like, it's got a little bit of a hard southern rock. Am I attuned to?
No, I think I think we have an influence of all time. I mean, our influence, it's everything. But I mean, like definitely, like we're southern. Like I'm a country fan. Like we just are. Like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like the adrenaline used to sort of remind me of like the Doors almost had like a Doors kind of like like it reminded me of like Roadhouse Blues when it first was written. But yeah, I mean, it's cool that you hear that. I remember seeing an interview with Keith Richards on a Chuck Berry special talking about how he just started to describe like your influences and how and I think this describes it best, just how you're influenced by everything you take in. You know what I mean? And it's the music and it's all the music. It's not just your favorite music. It's like the stuff you hear on the radio, everything that goes into you somehow comes out of you again in one shape or another. It could be the food you eat, could be the drugs you do, it could be whatever it is. And I think for us as musicians, there's obvious influences that we have, but we are such ever consuming music fans that it's very typical for like, let's say I'm like 90% influenced by Neil Young, the 10% is always changing. So one day it could be Neil Young and Pink Floyd, but the next day it could be Neil Young and Karen Carpenter, and the next day it's Neil Young and Black Sabbath, and next so it's like we all have this within us where like there's constant new inspiration, and there's our favorite standards that we sort of draw from as well. So, and I would definitely say Southern rock, like Skinner, me and James, like Skinner is like especially their old guitar is like that's some of the grooviest guitar you can listen to, you know what I mean? So and a lot of that is the double guitar playing off each other, creating the bounce, and so I would definitely say, but I don't think there's a scene we specifically draw from ever,
No,
it just happens.
I thought I was crazy. I like Blackstone Cherry a lot, and they're more the southern hard rock. And I'm listening.
Definitely.
This sounds like in that vein. And I was like, I don't remember Finger 11 really, but it works, and I think it sounds great. So yeah,
that's perfect. Yeah, I mean, like, and that's part of our goal too, right? Is to ever evolve. So, is to like, we don't want to stay in one inspiration for too long. So it's like if there's new sounds in it that's awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah, and that sounds like it's part of the self-discovery of 10 years, right? It's always learning something new about yourself, what you listen to, what's current in your mind, and interpreting it in your own way and with the band. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. That's exactly what and I think that's why it takes us a long time, because I think some other bands and even other writers, they have an idea and it's like, this is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to achieve it. And we're going to get it done this fast. And that's cool. Like but we don't have that in our band. We don't have a leader in our band. It's all demographics. So it just takes time,
That's great. I want to be respectful to your time. My last question, do you think it's going to be another 10 years before we get to your next album?
Oh, I don't know. I don't want to make any promises. I can honestly say I don't, because simply because the machine has started up again, the hunger's there, the excitement's there, all that stuff's there again.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for a long time because we needed to refill our tanks. And now that it's there and to be honest, we're blown away by the reaction and the excitement so I can see all those things combining to make new music happen sooner than later, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I love the album, and I hope, next time you come to New Jersey, I'm going to come out and see you guys, take some pictures, do a review. So that'd
be awesome.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, well, thanks for listening. I appreciate you taking time to listen to the record and talk about it. But if we are there, come say hi for sure.
I definitely will. It's so nice speaking with you, Ray. Have a great day.
You too, bro.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Heavy metal rock. Global mind.